Before we get started, I took my words right out of my mouth. I was just going to comment that we are going to be or are recording this afternoon's informational workshop so that folks are able to access it into the future. So hopefully no one has any issues with that, but we do need to make sure that we make everyone aware that it is being recorded. So you should see that icon at the top left of your screen. But do thank you all for being with us this afternoon. We hope this 90 minutes is a very informative time to really learn about the different ways and services and opportunities to partner with Department of Rehabilitation for the individuals that we serve on probation. A couple of housekeeping items before I introduce our speakers. Just want everyone to know there's two ways to ask questions this afternoon. You can use the chat feature, and myself and Amy Hodge will be monitoring that for our speakers. And as well, you can use the raise your hand feature. So feel free to use either option depending on your preferred method there. But do want you to know there are two ways to ask questions of our speakers. We will also be placing the PowerPoint in the chat box in the very near future. So you will have access to that. And additionally, we will send that out to you post this workshop. So you will get it in two different ways. So with that, I would like to introduce our two speakers. This afternoon, we have with us Jessica Grove, who is the Deputy Director of Vocational Rehabilitation and Policy Resources Division with Department of Rehabilitation. And we also have Mark Ehrlichman, who is the Deputy Director with the Vocational Rehabilitation Employment Division, also with Department of Rehabilitation. And so they are with us this afternoon to really go over the different resources that Department of Rehabilitation can offer the clients that we serve who meet the eligibility requirements, and they'll be sharing more information on that and the different ways that we can partner with them both at the state level, but certainly within the regional offices that are located throughout the state. So very excited to have both of them with us this afternoon. And we were commenting before we got started that this will hopefully will be the very beginning of many future partnerships and communications with their both the state office, but also the regional offices for those of you within your county probation department. So with that, I will turn it over to Jessica and Mark.
Great. Thank you, Rosie. Really appreciate yours and Amy's coordinating this and giving us the opportunity to have hopefully, like you said, the first of many conversations. I know we have some relationships with some probation offices in some counties and others not. Some of you might already be experts in the voc rehab program, but we hope we still can provide some additional information and hopefully get us on the path to closer and closer working relationships. So again, as Rosie mentioned, my name is Mark Ehrlichman. I'm the Deputy Director of the Employment Division, and our Employment Division really is the direct services provisions that you would be interacting with more frequently than not. And I started my career almost 30 years ago as a counselor, and I worked as a counselor in Salinas, working with migrant farm workers, with individuals with learning disabilities out of a transition program, and also worked with a reentry population with an organization called Friends Outside as the liaison there, individuals that were coming out of most frequently are coming out of what was then called Soledad Prison. So Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everybody, and thank you again to Rosie and to Amy and for you all for joining this meeting with us today. I'm Jessica Grove. My current role is a Deputy Director over the Policy and Resource Division, so working closely with Mark as part of the executive team. I also started as a counselor. My journey with DOR started 10 years ago. I'm an individual with a behavioral health disability and also a heroin addict in recovery. So when I got healthy, and I started that journey towards understanding how those two things work together at age 35. And yes, I have had some contact with your system, as many of people like myself have. Then I put it together. For me, having a purpose, going to a job, it gave me so much in terms of recovery and wellness. I had a feeling that I had something to contribute, and it gave me a way to integrate back into society. And so I'm very passionate about employment, and employment as an indicator of health, and providing that community that individuals need, in addition to the financial independence and the health insurance and the things that go along with that. So that's what brought me to this particular world. And I started out as a counselor, and now have the pleasure of supporting the work that the direct field staff does, and also from a larger statewide perspective, how we can partner with systems that we may not have worked with as closely or did in the past and are no longer doing that, to really serve those individuals in California who may benefit from the wraparound that we can provide that may not be coming from another area. So really looking at even what is disability and how do we work with individuals in other areas who may not identify yet as having a disability, but who we know could benefit from the services that we can provide. So again, happy to be here, and I'm going to be the driver of the PowerPoint. We've got slides, it's got information, you'll get the info. Don't worry about writing it all down, right? We want this to be the beginning, as Mark said, of many conversations. So if at the end of this you go, well, that sounds great, but I don't remember how to get a hold of somebody, you're going to have our contact information, and we mean it when we say reach out to us, and we'll connect you to the people at the local level to have further conversation. Let me pull up the share screen. Okay. Can now see the screen. So there you go. Slide number 1 just gives you the spelling of our name again and shows you our fabulous logo. Oh, it's not forwarding. There we go. Did I go too far? There. All right, Mark, why don't you start in on this slide if you don't mind?
Will do. And I just want to reinforce, Jessica, what you just said, which is, we hope people are paying attention and listening and taking notes, but don't be overly concerned if you miss something, or if you get lots and lots of questions that come up. We will try to respond to questions. If something is pressing, particularly if you need some clarification about something we said in a slide or in our conversation, feel free to put that into the chat. We will try to leave ample time at the end for questions as well, and hopefully we can respond to them all. But also, please also be comfortable with not necessarily having to write every single thing down. We will actually we'll be more than happy, and our plan is to connect you with our local staff and our local leadership throughout the state. And one of our regional directors or one of our district administrators can come out to meet with you and your team and do a similar presentation and be specific to your areas and to your questions and needs. So if you miss something or you have your interest piqued, feel free to let us know, and we will have somebody come out and meet with you and your teams and your staff out to where you're located. So hopefully that allows you to sit, listen, and think of ways we can better inform you today and what you might need in terms of presentations down the road. So as we mentioned, and in the beginning, some of you may be very familiar with the vocational rehabilitation program, others not so much. We're going to do an overview and get into just a few details and really describe what it is we do, who we work with, and how we work, which is the goal of today's presentation. Hopefully we can achieve that. So when I talk about vocational rehabilitation, really what we're describing is a process which services, supports, counseling, and guidance is made available to individuals with disabilities that are impediments to employment. We are very much an employment program. So we're an employment services program that works and specializes working with people with significant barriers to employment that are caused or as a result of a disability, a health condition, or psychological, psychiatric, that keeps them from being either successfully employed or being successfully employed up to their full capacity, or it somehow impacts their ability to advance in employment. When I talk about the services that we provide, really the primary service we provide is vocational counseling and guidance, which is intended to help an individual understand both their individual situation, conditions, and how that applies to or it may impact their employment. But it really is intended to inform somebody, to allow them to make informed decisions about where they want to go. Then once through the process and the planning process, an individual that we're working with has made a decision of what their ideal or their desired vocational goal is, we would then develop a plan to customize services specific to them so they can obtain and maintain their employment, and with the ultimate goal is that they can live in the community of their choosing, and that they have income, resources, supports, and benefits that help them maintain their independence and allow them to continue to live in the community and benefit from all the benefits that employment offers someone. Like Jessica mentioned, we also think of it as an indicator of wellness. Our plans are intended to be time limited. Are intended to be time limited and very specific to that individual's goal, but we can do sequential services sometimes where somebody will need something now and they may need something later. But the goal is for us to have somebody achieve that employment outcome. And it really is intended to be very consumer or person-centered around with those individual needs. And we put a team of staff, including a counselor, a trained counselor. Most of them have degrees like Jessica and I have in vocational rehabilitation counseling, or some related field. But we also have other service team members that support that individual with coordinating services and ensuring that there is that the support and assistance that individual needs is it continues to be available to them. So next slide.
I think one of the things I'd want to add there too is if an individual decides to stop receiving services from us, they're free to do that and then start again with no penalty, right? So if somebody is moving around a lot and they're not sure where they're at, or circumstances require them to stop participating, as I'm sure you guys are very familiar with, as life happens to people, we expect and understand that an individual may need to come back to the department a number of times, and the individual can change their mind on what that plan is and come back and have that discussion with the counselor. What we're hoping is that the counselor is going to help inform them about jobs that are available that they may not thought of, that will be a good match with them, and also work with, again, those particular barriers they might have, bringing their knowledge of the workplace and employment to bear for the individual. So there's not a problem if someone starts and then stops and then starts again, or even starts and I'm going to put it in air quotes, fails, loses a job. That happens to people. You can still come back again and re-engage. So I want to make sure that you know the person-centered focus is very real. We use the term consumer at DOR to mean the individual we're serving, and I think you probably use a different term in your area, but you'll hear Mark and I use that. So this next slide talks about where we are. Where do we deliver the services that Mark is talking about? So we're a medium-sized state department. We have about a little under 1,400 staff that provide these services directly to about 100,000 individuals in the state of California per year. We operate field offices. We're very proud to say we stayed open for services throughout the pandemic, because it was important that individuals were able to get to us. And not every individual who's working with us has technology, knows how to use that technology, has been trained on any other accommodation that they might need to access that technology or has connectivity. So it was really important for us to keep those doors open. So we have 85 approximately field offices throughout California. An individual can receive services from us either virtually or in person or a combination of both. It's really providing the options for them based off of their particular situation at the time. And we've split up the state into 13 geographical districts covering the whole state. They're not based on district lines of other people. Sometimes they go over a county, like in Los Angeles, we have 4 districts that cover that area. And then we also have a district that's always been statewide, and that's called the Blind Field Services District. So persons with disabilities, all types of disabilities, can receive services through the department. We do have a specialized service section that works with individuals who are blind and low vision and deaf and hard of hearing to some extent. We're all one department, and individuals may have more than one disability as well, but that's kind of how our framework is set up. I'll do this one too again, Mark, and then I'll shoot it back to you, all right?
Okay.
So as Mark said, the individual must have a disability. In some cases, though, the individual may not be at a place where they're identifying that. So for example, someone who served through the county behavioral health system, the behavioral health system has identified that they have a disability and they've referred them to us. So through a skilled interview with that individual, our counselor can determine whether or not they do in fact have a disability. We do work with youth and students with disabilities as well. And so in that case, there's a fairly broad, you may be familiar with people who have an IEP and are engaged in services for that, but it's a little bit broader than what you might be thinking of as disability. Then the other requirement for eligibility is that this disability constitutes a result in a barrier to employment, a significant barrier to employment. I think that for many people who are involved in the justice system, there's a number of different barriers that are acting to make employment a challenge. And so eligibility based off of, is there a barrier to employment and how does that connect to the disability, is something that we're able to work through with the individual and perhaps with the probation officer. And so the third prong of eligibility is, will these services be beneficial to you to secure employment, retain employment, regain, or advance in employment? So yes, we help people to get jobs, but we can also intervene to help someone retain a job, right? So the individual is working on the job, maybe they're experiencing an exacerbation in a behavioral health disability, or something is changing with their vision or with their physical health, or the workplace has changed and all of a sudden we have to go virtual, right? And they need to learn some technology in order to retain that job. We can help with that. We can also help with an individual who wants to advance in employment. So someone comes through your system, we help with, let's just say with getting them that first job. And then after a few years of success, they're interested in learning a new skill to receive a promotion. They can re-engage with us and we can help with that as well. And we also can do interim employment, right? So say an individual comes to the department and their larger goal is to become a teacher. But in the meantime, they need money to pay the rent, right? And we want them to have that stability of employment. They could be working and still be receiving services to advance in employment. And we do provide support for adult work experience as well. Mark, anything you wanted to add to that one?
Yeah, I think covered really well. I just wanted to just piggyback on it a little bit because I presented at a youth conference earlier this week, and it was youth service providers and actually some youth. And one of the questions that came up was, well, what if you don't have a disability? And so which is, and we actually have connections to the workforce system and other partners that can work with somebody who may not have a disability. But I did kind of describe what we mean by disability, because there are some youth particularly who are not going to identify themselves as having a disability. But when as a counselor or when they meet with a counselor and they start having a conversation, or they start exploring the person's individual situation or the difficulties and challenges they may have, we find out that we need to do a better job of explaining, that disability is a broad term. We're not here in the business of labeling someone, but if somebody has significant anxiety, and we were working with one young lady who was trying to refer a friend of hers for services, and she said, she goes, yeah, it would be great if there's something like that for me, because I have so much anxiety, I've almost dropped out of school twice. And we're like, wait a minute. If you have so much anxiety that you've dropped out or you've withdrawn, and she goes, yeah, well, I'm seeing a doctor for that, so it's not as bad all the time. I go, well, you have a condition and a situation that could make you eligible for services. Are you interested? And she was very interested. In fact, she ended up applying for services, and we're helping her now get through college. And she's in biosciences, and so it really was, it was that, she was a remarkable young lady to begin with, and she didn't believe that she needed services or supports, or that there was anything available for her. But with doing some exploration around her health and her barriers to training or education, we really find that she was eligible for services. Another thing we noted, and so we're working a lot trying to get out and work with foster youth programs, and we are working with the Division of Juvenile Justice, and we're really trying to get more, make sure that everyone and anyone who could benefit from our services is aware of our services. One of the things we noted is that a great many youth in the foster care program and a great many youth that are justice involved have suffered or experienced trauma. And so we're doing a better job trying to communicate it, that is, in many instances, that causes, whether it's post-traumatic stress, whether that's depression or situational depression, or self-medication, substance abuse. Those are all what we would consider conditions that are impediments to employment, and that could be a disability that makes them benefit from, would make them eligible for our services, and we would hope and expect that they would explore whether we can help them or not. And if we couldn't, like I said, if they don't have a disability, or they don't have something rising to the level that they would need our services, we do have a lot of partners in the general workforce system that we can work and collaborate with. So what we would ask is, if in doubt, refer, or pick up the phone and call one of our offices and say, I have a young man or a young lady, or some a non-binary individual who wants to, who may benefit from services. Can we share some information and talk? And we're happy to walk through the process and make the determination, so you don't have to become experts in disability. But we also particularly working with some of our youth, try really hard not to just say disability, say our health condition or learning challenges or difficulties, because sometimes people think we're trying to label them, and that's not our goal or purpose. Our goal and purpose, and the reason we exist, is to help individuals go to work. So
something I wanted to say that we didn't say, age that you have to be eligible. So we can provide services starting at the age of 14, and there's no upper end, because I'm hearing a lot lately about that very same thing among people who are older, who are like, oh, I don't have a disability, I just can't see the screen anymore at work, right? I don't have a disability, I just can't do this anymore. And so again, that disability carries stigma, right? And so we want to do whatever we can to help an individual receive the benefits of our services. And we're looking to you and hoping that you'll help us to make that introduction and to teach us about the terminology and the things that might make it more palatable to an individual who's uncomfortable or maybe uncomfortable with that disability Department of Rehabilitation name right on it. We can talk about how we can be of benefit without having to come in hard and heavy in disability with a capital D.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jessica. And our goal, and so one of the things that we were finding is also as we're engaging more with the foster youth and with adjudicated youth and the systems that you are all involved in, is that depending on who you ask, that there's either a 30% disability rate of youth in foster care or that are adjudicated, and in some instances, some studies have shown as much as 70%. My personal experience has been it's closer to 70 than 30. There's a lot of undiagnosed, particularly individuals who are learning disabled who dropped out of school or who were not diagnosed, individuals with autism spectrum, substance abuse, a lot of individuals that are self-medicating for depression that don't know they're self-medicating for depression or for anxiety. And so we're finding that when we get a referral, typically, which the first thing we do is we do that eligibility assessment, we're finding that a lot of our youth, particularly those that have been involved in the system somehow, do have a disability, and in many instances, they really could benefit from the help and support to help them enter into either further training or education. And so the very first thing that we do when somebody applies for services is we do an eligibility assessment. That can be us requesting medical or school records, or sending somebody up for evaluations, or talking to the referral source, and almost always includes a conversation with the applicant. Most of the information that we get around an individual's eligibility is something that is provided by the individual themselves. The medical records and school records provide some background, but it's like that relationship, a conversation with the individual that we find is the most valuable. So once we make an eligibility determination decision, and we've gotten really, really good about expediting this. In the past, I don't know if those of you have worked with us in the past, typically, well, I would say a few years ago, when somebody applied for services, we would automatically request records or send somebody for an evaluation, and then we'd schedule them an interview down the road. And we would take somewhere between 30 and 60 days to find somebody eligible for services. Typically, the median was around 40 days, 40 or to 45 days. And if I, as a customer of the system, I would not want to wait a month and a half just to get the answer to the question, can I benefit from services? Am I eligible? So in the last, I would say, in the last year, we've gotten really good about making that eligibility determination decision, completing that assessment through a conversation and through observation. And the majority of our consumers and the majority of our applicants have an eligibility determination decision made within 5 days of their date of application. And when I'm talking about the majority, really more than 4 out of 5 applicants get that answer to that question within 5 days. For us, really, really proud of that, because it is all about customer service, and it is about maintaining that individual's momentum. If they're interested in services and they need assistance in going to work, they shouldn't wait 2 months for assistance. The sooner we can provide tip services, the sooner we can get started. Usually the more successful an individual is. And at the very least, the individual feels like they're more important in the process, and because they are, they're supposed to be. So after eligibility determination, what we do is we work, like I mentioned, through a person-centered process, through conversations with the individual, providing them the information about their situation, their condition, their training, their prior work history, the world of work, what the labor markets tell us, and develop what we call an individualized plan for employment. And through that plan, which is really the individual's informed choice, guides and directs the plan goal. Within that plan, we put the vocational goal, the employment goal, and we list the services that they're going to receive in order to achieve that employment goal. In that plan, we actually list what those services are going to be. We can provide training, including college and college education. The young lady that I mentioned, she's in a biotechnology program. We have individuals that are in medical school. We have individuals that are in apprenticeships. We have individuals that are getting career technical education. With some individuals that have gone right to a work experience and working for direct placement, and others that may be exploring self-employment. And so that's individualized to their goal. And if, let's say, they're in training, they need tutoring assistance, they need books, they need training materials, they may need work tools or others, those are provided for them through the plan. There's no charge. We don't charge any of our consumers for any of the services. There may be some shared costs. For example, they may have to apply, well, they should apply for financial aid anyway. But if we provide a service, we don't charge them for those services. If we provide them tools for the job, is so if somebody is in an apprenticeship program to be a carpenter, we do provide with the work boots and the tools, the tool belt, their framing hammer, their safety glasses, their hard hat. Those are all tools that we would provide so they can begin their apprenticeship and begin work. If someone needs assistance in order to prepare to go to work or to get to their training, we can provide that. We mentioned deaf and language interpreter services for individuals. We also provide support through staff that are language and culturally competent in really any of the languages that are the main, practically all the languages that are prevalent here in California. So we have staff that speak, I think we have 16, 18 languages in one of our districts. I think we have 16 different languages that the district staff can speak. So in addition to deaf and sign language interpreter services, we can also provide, we also work with people in their preferred mode of communication, including their primary language. We can provide assistance for note takers. If someone needs a driver to get to and from, we can provide that support and assistance, as well as reader services. When we talk about transportation, if somebody is going to training, we reimburse them for their costs to get to and from their training site, including mileage. If somebody needs an auto repair and the vehicle is repairable, we can provide that as well. The goal for us is to ensure that the individual has what they need in order to participate in the program and succeed in the program. Once somebody begins work, if they have some on-the-job needs, particularly to learn and acquire some of the skills or knowledge necessary to perform the job, and the supervisor needs assistance in doing that training, we have what we call job coaches. We primarily provide them for individuals that may have intellectual developmental disabilities, but we also can provide them for any disability, including individuals with behavioral health disabilities. We have a percentage of our participants are on some type of public assistance, and it's a pretty large percentage. And what we want to make sure is as somebody makes decisions about their employment and their career choices, and when they begin to work, we want to make sure that they understand the impact to their benefits and that they take the steps necessary so they don't jeopardize their benefits or they don't put themselves in an overpayment situation. For example, if you're making too much money and on Social Security, if you haven't reported that to Social Security timely, they will ask for some of that money back. So we want to make sure that as we do our planning, that the impact to the individual to their benefits is clear to them and they take the appropriate steps. And also that they understand, even if somebody's on Social Security or on some type of public benefit or public assistance, that we can absolutely inform them and communicate to them that they're always going to be better off working than they are trying to stay on Social Security, because there are work incentives, there are ways to maximize their benefits while working. But I worked as a benefits counselor, and I cannot think of one example where I told somebody, "Oh, you don't want to go to work here because your benefits are better." No, it is. If we have done correctly, the work incentives planning and benefits planning always demonstrates to the individual working and being employed really facilitates their independence, and they will make more and have a better life because of it. One of the things that we've also been providing recently, and I think Jessica mentioned this, we can also provide what we call interim employment or interim employment opportunities. If somebody is working to get a degree or is to get into some advanced training, but they need some part-time work, or they need some employment, or they need some work experience, because we know employers like both that degree and they really like the demonstrated work experience. we've actually invested a lot of time and resources in supporting paid work experiences and unpaid work experiences, with a highlighting and a focus on trying to get that to be a paid work experience. And we're seeing many more youth, particularly youth and students that we're working with, take advantage of that. And we're finding that a great many of them, that's the first time they've ever experienced work. We think that, oh, well, every 16, 17, 18-year-old will have had some type of a work experience somewhere. Most of the consumers that I've worked with in the last couple of years who we set up for a work experience has either communicated that it was either their very first experience or was their very first work experience that they got a paycheck from. And it's really cool to see them recognizing, realizing that their work has value and worth, and what they do is compensated because they are producing, they are productive members, and they offer something to that employer. And for us, the goal and ultimate goal and the expectation is either somebody's advanced in employment or they've acquired employment. And we do work with a wide network of providers in the community that helps us with placement and on the job supports. But the ultimate goal, like I said, is for that individual that we're working with to acquire a job that they benefit from and that can promote, and that gives them the same opportunities and experience that anybody else would, disability or not. So
I'm gonna add, I know we don't move through the slides quickly because we just really want to share and connect it to the work that you're doing, the hard work that you do. One of the things that I think is important to call out too, we do, as Mark said, we do ask for comparable benefits. Is there somewhere else that you could be receiving this funding? Let's go back to the example of college, the FAFSA, right? So we ask that everybody apply for the FAFSA. We can work with an individual who's denied aid because of past experience to include fraud. Right? So as long as the individual is able to provide to us and show us that they're not eligible for that aid, right, then we can go ahead and cover the entirety of the cost. So if an individual is eligible for aid often doesn't cover some of the expenses, either the entirety of the tuition, or you're on your own for books and supplies. We can pay those things like books and supplies, like lab fees for that class, because you're going to have other things as part of that. So those are things that we can bring to it. Another one that I've experienced a lot is dental work, right? Individuals who the condition of their teeth is an impediment to employment at this point, right? And so they would need to demonstrate that they're not covered through another system for dentures, as an example. And then if that's the case and it's determined that this is appropriate to their plan, then that's something that DOR can come in and support. What about an individual who's been out of work for a long time, right? Or maybe has worked, but not in the legitimate workforce. Work experience is an excellent way for not only for someone to gain self-esteem and learn about their abilities and their interests, it's also a great way to have something on that resume, right? So that they have something to talk about when they're in front of an employer and they're feeling ashamed and like they don't fit, right? So we give them things that they can focus on and that they would be able to talk about how they do that job. Another thing that Mark mentioned when we're talking about the trades and apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship, which is such a big thing. If you have union dues, those are things we can help with too. If you have to at that employer take a ServSafe test, those types of things are things that we can support if it's part of that employment goal. All right. Let's see what the next, come on slides. Order of selection, this is really kind of on our back end. We get our funding mainly through the federal government. All states have a VR program. States and territories have these programs. We can't say, oh, we can only provide each person $50 worth of service. It's individualized to the person. So when there's a lack of funds, order of selection allows us to prioritize, kind of triage who we serve so that we're serving the people with the most significant disabilities first. Right now in California, while we're still under order of selection, all of our categories are open, which means that an individual doesn't have to have, when I went to VR for services, and I didn't yet know that I had a psychiatric disability too, and I just sought services because I was coming out of a treatment center. At one point, I was placed on the waiting list because my disability wasn't deemed to be significant enough. Right now, and for the last few years, and we're not anticipating it changing in the years going forward, all of our categories are open. And so that's what the order of selection, an individual who's receiving services from us will receive a priority category. So if you're working with someone and they have questions about that, we can explain. It's really something, again, on our back end in terms of our funding.
So Jessica, I'm
yes,
sorry.
yeah.
So that means there isn't like a wait period right now for individuals that are getting referred to DOR.
Correct. We have no type of wait list. An individual, like Mark said, can be found eligible the same day or within days of their contact with us, and we can move straight into talking to them about what are their interests and how can we develop that plan together. The federal, Mark, you want to talk about the common performance measures?
Yeah, and I would just cover this pretty quickly. For us, really, it's we want people to know what we're looking for and what our purpose is, which really is, like I mentioned, is get individuals to work. And it's not just, and this changed in 2014, and in 2016, our new regulations came out. This changed what we're measured by. In the past, it used to be how many people that you provide services to went to work, and then what were they making when they went to work, and then after 90 days we closed their case and we called it a day and we worked with the next individual. Since 2016, we've actually shifted what we count as success and redefined it. And it really is somebody that we work with, that we provided services to 2 quarters out. So anywhere between 3 months and 1 day and 6 months after they've left our program, are they in unsubsidized employment? Are they working? And during that period of time, during that 3-month period of time, how much did they make? And we put this slide in here and we highlight that because we really want to communicate that we're in here for long-term employment and for individuals, not just to maintain their employment, but to make as much as they can. So it's not about, in the past, if you got somebody a job, they're working 5 hours a week, you're good to go. No, for us, that's not good enough. Our goal is high wages and quality jobs. We're also measured by and happy about that by what services are we providing individuals, and are they successfully matriculating through those services, particularly training and education. And so we actually look at in the plan, what skills are this individual supposed to be acquiring, and are they in a degree or certificate program, and did they get the skills, did they get their degree, did they get their certificate, because we are measured by that as well. So we're in it for the long haul, and we're also making sure that individuals, as they matriculate, as they work with us, are successfully participating and succeeding in their plans. And finally, we actually, one of the things, in addition to an expansion of who we work with as students and youth, we also have one of our performance measures is our effectiveness in serving the employers. So if you're working with an employer has some questions about whatever my disability employment, how to accommodate their employees, how to better outreach and support the employment of individual with disabilities, we can go out there and provide services directly to that employer, even if it's an individual with a disability is not part of the equation. And so that's been a shift as well. And we have a whole workforce services team and employment, what we call employment specialists or business specialists in our districts that go out there just to provide support to businesses. So I really want to highlight that, because people ask, what does the department do? I go, well, we help people with training, and we help people with long-term careers, and we help businesses acquire and keep talent with disabilities. So that's why we kept this in here.
Oh gosh, can I make you do this one too?
No, but I'll do it anyway. Kim, so absolutely happy to do that. All right, and so like I mentioned, in 2014, our law changed. We've always been interested, and we've always, like I say, when I started as a counselor, one of the population I worked with back in 1994 was individuals that were in the school system, that were transitioning or graduating from out of secondary school, either into college or into employment. So we've always worked with students, and we have a lot of robust programs to work with students. But what we learned in 2014 with the reauthorization and with the regulations reinforced in 2016 is that we needed to get into the schools even more, and we needed to serve individuals that were even younger, and we needed to provide them or at least make available to these youth with disabilities these what we call pre-employment transition services. And so if somebody ages 16 to 21 has a disability and they're in some type of educational setting, either a secondary school or community college or an adult school or ROP program, they can receive, without even have to go through the whole application process, they can receive one of our 5 pre-employment transition services. They don't have, and we just need some basic information. And those 5 services include work-based learning opportunities, which for us has been, like I mentioned, we have a really significant focus on paid work experiences. And so that's work-based learning. We can provide workplace readiness training, which enables and allows the student to know and understand what the expectations are and to prepare for work, things like creating a master application. We also provide training in self-advocacy skills, so somebody can speak up and talk about what it is they're interested in, what they need. We can also provide counseling on post-secondary educational and training opportunities. So give somebody their options after school. What are their college options? What are their career options? And we can also provide what we call, career counseling. And so those 5 pre-employment transition services are available to all students ages 16 to 21 that have a disability in California, whether they're in a correctional facility, whether they're in a hospital setting, whether they're at their local high school, it doesn't matter. We make the services available to those youth, to those students. And that, when we talked a little bit about our relationship with the Division of Juvenile Justice, it really was for us to get into their facilities and serve these students while they're in the facility. So by the time they're ready to get out, they knew what they were going to. They're either going to college, they're going to employment, or they're going to further training. And our MOU allowed us and gave us the access to those students. This is a big deal for us. We estimate that there are approximately 190,000 students with disabilities ages 16 to 21 in California, just in secondary school. It's about 143 to 144,000 students in special education. There's also students with disabilities that do not need special education, but they have what we call a 504 plan, which allows them to receive some type of accommodations. For example, if you have a student that has a mobility issue, they don't necessarily need special education, but they need access to the classroom. And so just in secondary school, just in a public secondary school or supported by the public secondary school system, there's at least approximately 190,000 students. We've estimated there's over 90,000 students in receiving services from disabled students programs at the California community college system. Assuming that many of them are 18, 19, 20, or 21, we believe that there's at least 50,000. So there could be as many as 250,000 or 260,000 kids in California that are students ages 16 to 21 with a disability that we want to get out and provide these services to. And so part of the conversation we're having with you today is, many of them, but we also know that there's a lot more out there. and we're really serious about ensuring that we do make those services available. We have actually, we mentioned we have about 1,400 staff, about 500 of them are counselors. There's at least 1,000 school districts in California that these students are just in secondary school. And so we have assigned staff to each one of those local education agencies, whether it's a SELPA or what's its local education plan, special education local planning area, or school district, or a non-public school setting, or a county school. But we whatever schools you work with, there will be a liaison that we've assigned to them. And if you don't know who they are, or you're working with the school, that's part of the reason we're talking today.
I really wanted you, Mark, thank you, to do this slide, because you've done so much great work on this of recent, and you're clearly passionate about it, right? All of those young people that could be reached, that we could help to put them on a path towards the quality of life that I know you are also wanting for individuals that you're serving. And this is an opportunity to do that. So it could be, transition schools. The ability for us to work with individuals is really wide. We need to know how to find them, where to find them. We're here to provide those services. They don't have to be in school. Now, of course, we'd like them to be, because we can provide these special services under our federal regulations, but we are also able to work with a youth who's unschooled right now. All right. So just want you to know that too. We're here for that too. We just will offer them through a different door. But we're here for those services as well. So even if someone is not currently connected to an educational institution, let's still talk. And Rosie, I see your hand went up.
Yeah, I think we might want to pause here, because I suspect there'll be some questions and just how people effectuate some of these things. And so I had a couple questions, but there's also one in the chat, is how do we connect probation clients to Department of Rehabilitation for services? Is there a referral process that they must follow, or we must follow?
Okay, so I'll start that, and Jessica, please add if there's anything you can think of.
Yeah.
One of them is we actually have an online request for services. So you could actually just go online to our webpage and just put that individual's information in there, and it'll get into our system, and one of our staff will contact or connect with them. That's one way. That's the least personal way, but that is a way to quickly access services. The other way is let us know that you're interested, and we will have a liaison to your probation department or your office, however we want to set that up. We will work that out with you. You can send them to any of our local DOR offices, and or let us know how do you want to work with us. So what is best for you? So the answer to the second question, is there a referral process we must follow? No, there's no must follow. How can we make these services accessible to the clients you're working with, and how can we make this as easy as possible for you, would be the questions I would come back with. And we would definitely start by connecting you with a local office, and you both work out what is the best way to make a referral.
I think that local relationship is so important, right? So if there's an opportunity for staff from DOR and staff from the probation system to meet each other and to share about what they do and how that system works for them. And then maybe, would you like to set up having a DOR counselor come to the site where you're working and do presentations to individuals who are in your program? Right, directly to those individuals, information. And if you're interested in signing up, we can take care of that right now type of session. It's really good, again, to have develop that local relationship though, so that when you've got someone that you're working with and it's tough, you have someone to call.
Thank you for that. And then another question that came through is, do you only serve, does a person have to be a citizen in order to receive services from DOR?
I love that question.
No. For us, that our criteria really is somebody have a disability? Are they interested in an employment outcome? Is there an impediment to employment, and can they benefit from services? We don't require, and we're not experts in immigration either. So just putting that out there. I'm not saying we don't serve undocumented or don't, but we're not, we work with individuals that come to us, and there's no citizenship requirement. They just need to be present at the time of here in the state and available.
Okay. And one last question before we get to the last few slides, and certainly open it up for more questions. When you were talking about the services for students, I can't recall if you mentioned tutoring assistance. One of the things that we've been trying to or working to expand is just the partnerships with community colleges and so forth. And one of the things that's difficult is being able to identify more tutoring and time for tutoring and someone to help with tutoring. And so I was curious if that's something that's covered, and then who would provide that if
So,
it's covered.
yes, it is absolutely, and we have a variety of ways of doing that. We have some businesses that we've contracted with that can do tutoring. We're seeing more and more services that are coming up to virtual tutoring. So people need access to technology, internet, Wi-Fi. We can provide access to computers, internet, and Wi-Fi to make those services accessible. And we also have really, really good relationships with a lot of our community colleges, and there's disabled students programs and services that have that provide on-campus supports for students with disabilities. And so we work with them and through them as well. But our goal is to kind of, kind of like a philosophy is if somebody needs if somebody needs something that will help them to succeed, we're in the business here of getting that done.
We're not supposed to supplant something another entity is supposed to provide, right? So that's sometimes we get into those conversations in the educational settings. Because are you talking about basic tutoring that's supposed to be provided already by the school? We can oftentimes make the case, though, that this individual is going to need additional tutoring to what they're offering, right? And maybe tutoring that's geared towards their particular needs because their disability. So there are many ways for us to be able to provide that additional support. Another thing that we're working on and that I'm seeing more and more is something called supported education, right? So maybe the person doesn't need strict academic tutoring. They don't need the math lab that I utilize. What they need is an individual with lived experience who knows how to navigate that system, who's going to be able to be someone they can check in with, right? Who's going to talk to them about the challenges of going to school, having the other life experiences around them. So, is it tutoring specifically to academics, or is it supports to help the individual be successful in achieving that academic goal? And like Mark said, the continuing to make measurable skill gain, right? Leading to certification, diploma, whatever that might be.
Thank you.
All right. If I look at the chats, then you're going to all see me looking at the chat. So I'm just going to trust you'll break in when needed.
Yes, that's our job. So we'll take care of that for you.
Cool. All right. So more about student services. As Mark was saying, it doesn't have to be while they're in secondary school. So in the division that I oversee, we have a lot of cooperative agreements with the school district. So in many cases, we are in a high school. We also have some cooperative agreements with community colleges, with adult schools, with the UC system. And we also have our direct staff who could work with someone, even if the educational location is not in a cooperative arrangement with us. We talked about potentially eligible, meaning they don't have to apply for VR services. One of the great things about VR services, though, is if they need additional support. For example, if the individual needs to have transportation paid for to go to that college campus for that tour or go to that job shadowing opportunity, then they could apply for the full gamut of VR services, and we'd be able to pay for those things in addition. So there's a little bit of a nuance, I guess I'd say. The potentially eligible student, as we call them, they can get into the service fast, right? For those 5 services Mark talked about. But if they need other things, a computer, for example, then we would have them open the full VR case and be able to provide those supplemental supports. And Mark went through the 5 different services, and I have to move this box. So directly through staff, through our partnerships, as I mentioned, through community providers. So we have these cooperative arrangements with county behavioral health as well. Not all counties, because county by county, they have the option of working with us. But we do have those arrangements where we do cross referral, and we fund their ability to staff and provide vocational services to consumers within their system. And the workforce boards, as Mark has mentioned too, we have relationships with all the workforce boards across the state, and we have partnerships there too, where we can, again, use both of our power and ability to bring in resources in aid of an individual. Oh gosh, we have special projects and initiatives. I know we're all have kind of initiative fatigue right now. Likely we have that moment in time where there's an opportunity to do something, and we have to act quickly, and we're not going to turn down an opportunity to expand our services to someone who needs us. So we've got a number of different initiatives right now. Pathways to Success is really exciting because it allowed us to take a different look at how we deliver those services. So if I'm a counselor, and traditionally, I may have 150 individuals on my caseload, and they may have 150 different goals, right? So I need to know everything about being a baker, being a welder, being a doctor, being a truck driver. And so what we're doing with Pathways to Success is looking at sectors. Okay, healthcare, for example, and right now we're working in Orange County on this. What if we had staff and counselors who were super knowledgeable about pathways into healthcare? And so if an individual from across the state is interested in a job in this area, they work with someone who knows everything, is embedded in it with employers, and understands what's meaningful to that industry. So that's shown to be really a great way for us to be looking at this, and we're developing more and more pathways. Mark, did you want to say anything about some of the particular pathways?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think for us, we want to highlight 2 things. One is where we want to get really good about meeting the needs of the businesses and looking at particularly the high demand sectors in California. And the other thing we really want to highlight is we're not about just entry level first jobs for people. We really are looking for career advancement in high skill, high wage jobs. And so the 5 sectors we're starting with, and we're going to be expanding. We started these 5 through a special grant. Includes the healthcare sector, Jessica, like you mentioned. We go biotechnology, like I mentioned with that young lady. That's how we connected with her, was through this project. We also have green industries, skilled manufacturing and transportation, information technology, and so those are, I believe, those are the 5 that I mentioned. 5. So. And these teams, they're located in areas where there's a concentration. For example, the information technology counselor and team is out of San Francisco Bay Area, and the green industries is out of the Sacramento area. But those teams can work with individuals and businesses anywhere in California. So we also have developed tools to provide virtual services and supports across the state. So we really are kind of rethinking. It's not about proximity to a counselor. It's about the individual's needs as it relates to their vocational and employment goals.
Also good because we can go to the employer, and many employers and many programs in communities right now are looking at diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, the letters that are going with that. And we can say, you tell us what it is that you need in your workforce. And we can create that pathway into that career to include the training, to include the equipment, to include the soft skills, to include all of these different pieces. And one of the things about disability is that it crosses all other categories of identity, right? So we can help them meet their need. They may not have thought of disability as a place to go, but we can develop and then build that pipeline for them so that individuals who also meet their DEI need are competitive for those jobs. And so that's where it's like serving business. What is it that you're looking for? We can give you that skilled workforce, and we can also bring that, that what you're looking towards, what might be called marginalized, underserved, justice involved, whatever you want to say that the business is interested in, or that apprenticeship program has been tasked to have included in their, yes, this apprenticeship thing or this investment will happen, but it has to include individuals who need us to we raise all boats, but some of them need to be raised higher than others. The next, go ahead, Mark.
And so what I would suggest, because we really want to make sure we leave some time for questions, I think we can really define what these others are, maybe mention something quickly about the CDCRDOR and the DJJ, because I think this is very relevant. And then if anybody has interested or piqued their interest, we're happy to follow up. But I know we've got 22 minutes left.
Okay, totally agree. Yeah, there they are. DJJ, and that started when it was the Department of Juvenile Justice, and now we're working with the Office of Youth and Community Restoration. But this is, as Mark mentioned, this was us saying, hey, can we go upstream? Can we go to individuals while they're in a custodial setting and provide them with these services now, so that when they get out, they're not having to start from zero? We know we have a short amount of time once they're released from those settings to really engage and keep them, help them to meet the goals that maybe they developed while they were incarcerated, and now all of the reasons why so many people drop off. So we started to have those conversations, and we're going to go in and partner with the prison education program in the juvenile justice system, and then COVID. So we continued to do it through the virtual means as soon as we could. And it's been a wonderfully successful partnership, and again, shows that whether an individual is in custody or not, we can help, and that we want them to meet our staff and feel comfortable with our staff prior to exiting the system. With youth especially, we were finding we have no idea where they might end up, right? We all have plans that they're going to go live with auntie, and then auntie can't have them and they're going somewhere else. So we want them to know who it is they're talking to, instead of asking them to, once you're out, along with everything else, reach out to us and then we'll send you the paperwork. That's not working. So same with our pilots with corrections for the adult population. We're looking at how we go in and say, can we take advantage of the time while the individual is in the incarcerated setting to make sure that they have access to career technical education and all of the other things, and help develop that plan for employment so that they're coming out with hope of something that they're going to do in that structure already. So Mark's been working, and we're in a few prisons now, providing services. Mark, I'm not sure of the particular, I want to say Corcoran, but I might be getting it wrong.
That's correct, Corcoran. We're starting in Corcoran. Our goal is then to also now expand into the women's facility in Chowchilla. But those are just getting in and seeing individuals from when they first begin their term, not when they're getting ready to exit, to make sure that they get the training and support that they need, and the accommodation support that they need in order to be successful after prison.
Yeah, and that's a place where the conversation about disability is very touchy. That is not something that you talk about. And so again, our ask is help us to make that connection from a trusted individual to a trusted individual, so that when they get out, They have that they know where they're going. They know who that person is that they're connecting to. And then foster youth programs, we're part of AB 2083, which requires various parts of the system to come together. And we've been really intentional in reaching out to that system and letting them know of the services that we provide, and doing some of that kind of side-by-side support of an individual who's either currently a foster youth or has come through that foster youth system. And that's the last slide. Thank you. So I'm going to take down the slide deck now.
That was so much great information, Jessica and Mark. I know I have quite a few questions, but just on I'll start with the last one. You mentioned 2083. So I know there's the statewide 2083 group, but are the regional offices also connected with the local 2083 work that's happening? Because certainly probation is part of that as well. I was just curious of how much involvement DOR has locally as well.
We can be on local MOUs, and we are in some, we're not on all, and we'd like to be. Yeah. So if you're at a table, right, and you're involved and you say, hey, rehab should be here, we would love to send local staff to participate in that.
Okay, great. So we can pause now and take any questions that anyone may have on earlier parts of their presentation, not exclusive to what was just covered on the innovation projects. Certainly, everyone's invited to either drop your question in the chat, as I know some have already been doing, or use the raise your hand function if you would like to just ask your question. But we do have a little bit of time for questions and answers. So definitely invite folks to ask any questions you might have.
And while we're waiting, so I just want to reinforce, we flew by those innovation projects. Really, the intent of that is for us to kind of communicate that we're looking to be different, and we're also looking for ideas and partnerships. And we looked at this for the last 2 years, we have a state plan that we do every few years that talks about our priorities. We have prioritized services to youth. We have prioritized services to justice-involved individuals. Those are and individuals with behavioral health disabilities. And then the final priority is individuals that are in non-competitive employment, that they're either receiving sub-minimum wage or they're not in integrated settings. So, our focus on our innovation projects and our conversations and getting out in the community, whether for foster youth programs or for adjudicated youth or adults, has been to address our priorities, and because that's where we believe is the great area of greatest need. So we really wanted to emphasize that, and really are appreciative of our partnerships, and we're hoping we will continue working even more closely together. So.
There is a question in the chat. If you could go over again how probation refers adult clients, or really any client, to services at the local level.
So I'm going to share my screen again. Let's see how well I do this to show you our DOR website. This is our DOR website, dor.ca.gov. And if an individual clicks on Get Started, it's going to tell you some information. And then this is where Mark was talking about, have DOR contact me, or they can even get started with the process by providing some information. Through the have DOR contact me, they'll be asked to put in a zip code, and 5 of the closest offices will show up for them there with the contact information on how to get a hold of them. So that's fine for someone to go and just try to knock on the door. I'm going to stop sharing again. But we need a warm handoff sometimes, right? So if you, again, like Mark said, if you want to make that local connection, we can be the people to help figure out who you need to talk to, who the district administrator is in that area, and you can do some more local introductions so that you know who to call to if you'd like. So you can help assist that person who may not be comfortable going through the website to get a hold of us. We can connect you to a live person who can walk the individual through the process.
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, we want this to work for you and the individual you're working with. Just saying, hey, go down to this address, we know that doesn't work. It can work, it doesn't always work, and we want to be very accessible to participants and potential participants. One of the things that in my district, when I was a district administrator, one of the things that we did is we would send a counselor out, I think it was every other week, to the location, and where they would have the individuals that they had. It was I think it was at the I think it was a parole office, not a probation. It was a parole office, and there was a conference room, and we would go do an orientation and hand out applications every 2 weeks. So we could do things like that, which is, we come out to you, take the applications, or we can set up individual Zoom meetings. It's really, we want to be as accessible as possible, and we wanted to work for you. So we will, like Jessica mentioned, we'll connect you with the local office. They can assign a liaison. You can talk to one of the managers over there. But the idea for really the basic premise is going to be, we want to make this as easy and as accessible as possible for your participants, your clients.
Is there a list of regional offices?
You can actually go onto our webpage and just type in your zip code, and it'll give you the closest office. We can actually provide you a list of all the district offices. Then you could sort out where, and they'll have the city, and so you're all better acquainted with what the closest office would be to yours. But yeah, we can do it either way. So let us know.
Okay, yeah, that would be great if we could send it out to everyone, Monday or Tuesday, whenever you have a moment to send that. And there was another question about if you have an annual report that you can share, or is.
I think our last annual report is more than 3 years old, so it's not technically annual anymore, is it? We do have a lot of information, and the latest data is on our webpage. So if you want to go on our website, look through, because there's some data information. There's our state plan is on there that talks about our performance, and that's really kind of long, but that would be what and if any specific questions or something more that you need, contact Jessica or I, and we'll happily provide whatever we have. We do have that old one that's really slick and glossy. I know we're working on a new one for this year. I don't know where that is, but I would just say start with I think on our cover page we have numbers and data and information. But we also know that we're not just passing, say, just look it up yourself. That's not what if you can't find it, let us know. We'll get you what we can.
Yeah. And we are working on updating brochures and things like that. We have them, we could send them, but then there's just going to be another thing sitting there on the table, perhaps. So we're happy to send you what we have now. But I do think that human to human connection may be more enticing to the individual that you're serving.
Yeah. Another question that has come through is, have you found difficulty supporting individuals with a history of severe felony crimes and locating employment?
I would say that, yeah, at times it's been difficult and challenging, but we continue to work with someone as long as they need our support and remain interested. Part of the challenges that we've had has been because we have not been as familiar with or as knowledgeable about things like expungement and sources and services available, like fidelity bonding. We're becoming more familiar with those, and what's really helped is we started, we talk about the innovation projects. One of them is with our partnership with Career Expansions, where the entire population we're working with are individuals that are coming out of their referrals from parole, individuals that are reentering into the community. And we're working with them right away to get them into a pre-apprenticeship program and then get them placed in apprenticeships in the building trade. So what we're finding is that it's sometimes it's so hard that we just have to create special programming and create pipelines. But if that's what it takes, that's what it's going to take. And we pay for that program, and we've seen a pretty good success rate out of that. Individuals that are lifers, that with one person that was he shared a video. I don't know if it's on our webpage yet or not, but I think he'd been incarcerated for over 18 years, and never thought he was going to be working, and he actually he tells a story about going to work, and he's got his union card, and he's working, making $30 something an hour, and I think he was helping to build, at the time I think he was working on SoFi Stadium, or I mean, so it is so it can be challenging, but that just means we have to work either harder or differently, and so that's what we're trying to do.
I think our partnerships are really key to that. We've been doing a lot of outreach and meetings with anti-recidivism groups and others who are working in this space already, saying, wow, there are things that you need for the individuals you're serving need that we could provide. Your expertise, though, on things like, are you allowed to get a barber license, right? If you've had these particular crimes on your record, those things, we really need to partner together. Because again, becoming an expert in all of that and an expert in disability and employment, we have to work across our systems if we're really going to make the changes that we'd like to see happen. So we're also really considering employment as diversion, right? So, for myself, when I got diversion rather than having to go into jail and stay in jail, there was no talk of employment as a piece of that. What if we provided employment services to a youth who finds themselves on probation? Could we change the trajectory? If we go into those schools and we provide solid hope and educational support, could we maybe see that people aren't getting incarcerated for the first time at the same rates? We don't know. These are all the questions we have, but we're willing to dive in and see if that employment piece can be something that, again, either keeps someone from that first engagement or helps them move away from it and stay out. We see that in mental health too, that employment as an early service before someone might be stable enough, in others' opinion, can actually lead to more recovery and less visits to the emergency room, less hospitalization. Yeah. So it's the same concept, I think, is that how can we bring that piece to what you're doing to help your goal, right? Yeah. Of helping people not return to the system.
Well, and I think that's what makes this afternoon so great, is because there's so many opportunities for partnership and shared goals that I think DOR and probation has, because probation is in lieu of detention, especially on the adult side. And certainly for the majority of the youth that we're serving, we're not serving in juvenile facilities, but certainly those that are in juvenile facilities, the opportunity to get them connected to services so that when they are able to reenter the community, they're already on a good pathway. And so I think there's just so many opportunities and shared goals that we have to increase the opportunities for individuals and their success. And as you point out, employment is a great indicator to that, and education. So really do want to thank you for your time this afternoon. I think you were a wealth of information. I'm sure you'll be getting some emails from us, and we'll send out some follow-up information to everyone, but did just really want to thank you for your time this afternoon and all the great information that you've shared with us. I certainly know that I will be reaching out so that we can continue these conversations and develop opportunities for further partnerships. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate your time as well, and looking forward to more conversations.
Thank you for your attention on a Friday afternoon, but so appreciate the invitation. Thank you, Rosie. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.